Good morning, everyone. My dear friends, welcome to the chapter 5 of the task of human living in our journey through the Book of Nâm. And thank you so much for coming and be here with us. It's one of the Nâm strengths, the capacity of gathering such, basically nice people, beautiful people. And it's really a privilege for us to make this journey for us with you. So for this chapter, we have already the essential raw material, because the fact that you're here means that you are alive. So the only thing left is to do the task of human living, and for going into the backgrounds of all of these on what is this task of human living. I'm here today joined by my usual companions with Hubertus. Good morning, Hubertus. Good morning, León.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Mário.
Good morning. So today we're going a bit more in detail and in what really this task of human living means, or what clues can we have in assisting us in this task. A lot has already been leading to this. I don't know how you experience it from your side. I've been, as more as I go through this, the Book of Nâm and all these episodes together, what I realize is like somehow we are cultivating a sort of a fertile ground that not necessarily through direct action, but rather through indirect action, it's facilitating, is enabling the magic, the beauty of living, and perhaps bringing that quality of life that we all aim at, and perhaps not only for living, as sometimes during this chapter is referred to, also not only the quality of your life, but perhaps of your dying and post-living. And yes, so this indirect effect, I've been feeling it very noticeable in this approach of Nâm. But okay, let's go now today to our subject, the task of human living. And we will start with León, that will give us a bit what conceptual framework can we have around it, what are the clues in this context. León.
Thank you, Mário, and welcome everybody. It's again a great pleasure to be here. And this time, when I say here, I mean, of course, in this virtual space where we are together. But I also mean here, actually, in the ashram in Niger, where I have the pleasure to be right now. And this also gave a very unusual opportunity to yesterday have a brief talk with Yoginâm. And also the topic of the task of human living came up there. So what he said about that, I have decided to just repeat here for this opening of this introduction, because, well, those were the words, of course. So he said that the task of human living is to live in such a way that you contribute beneficially to the totality of all. So that's the orientation. And then, of course, as we also know from previous episodes already, we cannot know the totality of all. But Yoginâm said humans have always been experimenting. The entire period as human beings, they have been experimenting with that, and they reached heights and they reached depths. And perhaps in the time where we are right now, we are closer to a depth than a height, but there have been heights. And in those heights, Yoginâm said, people realized that we are actually having a very intimate relationship with the totality that is. So it is not something far away. And performing the task of living is to use every instant of life in order to contribute as well as possible to life. And then this experience of thousands of years Yoginâm said, humanity concluded that beneficially contributing to the totality implies harmony, implies compassion, it implies love, it implies understanding. So it implies trying to do your best in everything that comes up. And of course, there's many indications for this in many traditions, in many teachings. Confucius, Buddha, Jesus. It's in the Quran. There's a lot of indications for how to do that, then how to live like that. What is this harmony is about? I guess I would reflect on that we are, right now in a kind of a period in a phase of humanity that maybe it's a little bit behind us now, that basically decided that all that thousands of years of experimenting doesn't count anymore. We have now science and rationality, and we'll start all over and discover what this universe is about. But in that process also, science also discovered finally that, there is some aspects about this which is really kind of unknowable, certainly through our rationality. So there's kind of a new opening to, there is something about that. So there is kind of a new need of then getting the indications of what, shaping that relationship, shaping that intimate kind of relationship with totality is about. And so that's the coming of Nam, which is kind of a consolidation, you could say, of all those that insight that humanity has gained. And in that, Yoginâm emphasizes what is helpful and leaves aside what is less helpful, certainly in the sense of the mindset of the people living right now, the psychological, cultural mindset. And so when we get to the Book of Nâm and to this chapter, of course, what this is all about is Yoginâm giving kind of tools, instruments to kind of with which you can shape your perception about a way of looking at yourself, way of looking at life and the world that is helpful for performing the task of living, for making this connection, this sharing in totality in what is. And it's never a kind of a theory about what the human being is or a philosophy. It is a skillful means, as he always says. So this sharing in what is, he opens the chapter with that, sharing in the totality of all it is, of what is, does not depend on believing it. It does not depend on whether you like it or not. It also doesn't depend whether you're interested in it. So it does depend on saying, well, for me, that's just not there. It is always there. It is, he says, it is the essence from which everything, human living and I world flows. What he does say is whether human living is optimal or, let's say, diverted, that does depend on the degree to which you include that aspect that you are sharing in what is into your attention. The more you have to introduce that into your field of attention and into kind of your remembering of that. So it's this remembering of the fact that you are sharing in what is. So this is attention and remembering. That was the topic of the last chapter. And this then is supported by attitudes and behavior, as we understand that when you get that into your attention, when you remember that in the situation in which you are in, you are sharing in a totality of what is, obviously this will also create a different type of attitude that you would have to a situation, a different type of behavior. Then he also repeats here that it comes up that we are beings of imagination, right? Yoginâm always says, like, we think that we are rational beings, and there's a rationality about us, of course, but what we really are in our completely is beings of imagination. And it's a motor of living, he says, and that requires meaning. So meaning is a very important thing. I guess it gives kind of this soul quality to life. You know, if something that has meaning gives it kind of a warmth in soul. And so for meaning, he says that it should not be conditional on what one searches meaning for. So, which means that the meaning should not be too superficial, you could say. If the meaning of your life is, let's say, advancing in your career, or it is like your meaning is in the good, but not in the bad, you know, it's very dependent on circumstances of your life, whether that meaning is stable, whether the meaning is there, and it can also stagnate. So the meaning in the end, the source of meaning is kind of transcendental. So if the meaning of your life is the fact that you are sharing in a totality and you want to contribute as best as possible with your living to that, that's a very kind of unshakable source of meaning, a very strong basis. So then in the chapter building up to performing the task of living, it's a very long chapter, this one. And the first half is kind of building up to that, repeating kind of the tools that you have available for performing the task of living. And the second part that really goes into a lot of details about what that involves. And we'll do that in 2 parts, right? Next episode is part 2, where we go into that. So some of those instruments, again, the skillful instruments, you know, this is about looking at yourself in a way that is helpful. So he emphasizes you are experience. He also refers to this SI-web, S-I-web, which is a way of looking at the human being, at yourself in terms of experience, in terms of dimensions of experience. We'll get to that in one of the next chapters, which is about experience as it happens. But the thing is, you look at yourself as that you are, all that you are is experience. So you are not a unit that is having experience, you are experience. And with everything that is part of you. So with thinking, you participate in the experience of thinking. And with feeling, you participate in the experience of feeling and kind of the dimension of feeling. So everything about you is already sharing in something which is wider. In each dimension of experience, this sharing is there. And about this sharing of I willed, he also, again, you know, kind of warns against less helpful ways of looking at it, let's say. So a well-known metaphor, I guess, is to compare yourself to a grain of sand. I'm just a grain of sand on a beach, and it sounds quite fine because it expresses how, you know, your awareness, how small you are, and how you are part of something much bigger. There's something much bigger than you. But actually says it is a very misleading metaphor, because still that emphasizes very much the illusion of separation. So a much more useful metaphor is this metaphor of the drop, that you are like a drop in the ocean, and as a drop you share in the wider ocean. So that's much more kind of this floating image. And that's also what he says, the more like you're much more, if you look more closer to yourself, you're much more kind of a cloud amongst clouds, kind of a drop in the ocean. And it's not so definable as you tend to think that it is. So he also speaks about witnessing. He uses that term a lot. So witnessing is part of experience. It's kind of a more narrow element of experience, you could say. So he says experience is what I world is, and witnessing is what I world does. So it's the movement in experience. So a lot of the experience is both conscious, is both conscious, and a lot of that, of course, is unconscious. Each one of us is now sitting in kind of a field of experience where there's a lot of experience that we are not conscious is happening, and the witnessing is that part of experience that you are a witness of. And of course, the witness is what it witnesses. You know, there's a connection to what the witness witnesses. What the witness witnesses is what makes him into the witness. He says in one of those pages. And then there is awareness. So you could say, so you are a being, that we've said that before, also of that exists both of experience and awareness. So we just said like all about you is experience, and there's nothing but experience about you. And then there's still something about what is awareness. And when you go through these pages and you read, there's a lot saying about what awareness is not. And you're reading that, then kind of you feel like, okay, so, you know, when is the moment going to come that we're going to say what it is? But Yoginâm says you cannot say what it is, because, of course, because when you say what it is, awareness is that, then actually you bring it into the field of experience, and it becomes again an experience. So basically you can say what it is not. And one important one in relation to experience, what it is not, is that it is not some kind of extended experience. So it is not like, oh, I have a wider experience, it's becoming wider, and that is kind of what awareness is. So he says it's basically nothing to do with experience, but awareness embraces experience. So just for a moment back to that metaphor of the drop in the ocean. So you can say, so the dropness of I world is experience, and the ocean of the sharing of I world is awareness. So it's kind of triggering that perception for what it is. So the only way in which awareness appears, he says, is as a quality in experience. So the moment life is lived in awareness, it gives a certain quality to experience. And in that way, it becomes, let's say, visible. So someone like Yoginâm will be able to see in somebody that this awareness is kind of there. It's in living, by the quality it gives to experience. And in attunement, that quality is there. In discordance, they say, if you don't attune to that, then that quality in experience is just not there. So you're still sharing in all of totality, but that quality of experience is not there. So attunement, in that sense, attunement is experience that is enriched by awareness. That is living in attunement, is living in experience enriched by awareness. But because you don't know what awareness is, you can also never claim it. He says it there. And in fact, he gives the example of wisdom for the sage. He says wisdom for the sage is just common sense. The sage doesn't live in wisdom. The sage lives in what is for him common sense. And it's the same with awareness. When I world is lived in awareness, it is only lived in common sense, because it becomes like a common sense. And this state of this attunement, of this experience enriched by awareness, this is very important. That is a natural state. Actually, so you can say, like, as a child, right? The child is exploring the world around him or her. Is kind of interested in the world around, and gets to know more and more about what that life is about. That is really the orientation of the child. But this exploring attitude actually never needs to stop. This goes on, and when you reach more maturity, it is kind of a natural exploring attitude that you also go like what is this beyond only this experience, that is this transcendental aspect of life, because you're naturally sharing in that. So it would be very natural that you get that interest in that. The problem there, of course, is that in, let's say, our modern contemporary, let's say, society and culture, this aspect of facilitating that interest is it's not there. It's not integrated in the cultural environment. So there's no channel for that. It can't channel it. So that's of course one thing what Nam is an answer to, that interest can also find its way. So it is a very natural state at birth to be born in ignorance of that transcendental nature of life, and you're born into this state of illusion, and it refers to a double illusion of separation, the state of separation. So the first illusion is that there would be a difference between a separation between awareness and experience. Let's say between transcendence, what is transcendent, and daily life, that there will be a separation between that. There's none. It is totally one integrated, let's say, reality. And the other separation, illusion separation, is this separation between sense of I and the sense of world, so that there's kind of a separation between you and the world around you. Whereas, of course, I world expresses that this is a continuity. And you're born in that ignorance, and Yoginâm says, with then an inherent urge to overcome that ignorance. And overcoming that urge, that is the task of living. And so if you say at some point, it is kind of in a mature life, if at some point in a mature life, you're not yet kind of in the state where experience is enriched by awareness, it's actually very unnatural, kind of something stopped somewhere, something stagnated. And the task of living is to overcome that and to live in this full realization. So this is where we arrive at this stage in that chapter. And then the further chapter goes into really lots of elements and aspects what comes along with performing this task of living. So for now, I would leave it there, and thank you, and back to you, Mario.
Thank you, Leon. Thank you so much, and thank you for reminding of something I forgot in my introduction, which is the reference that in view of the, let's say, the size and also complexity of this chapter 5, we have decided to break it into 2 sessions, in which we first address this first part of chapter 5 today, where we go to the more description of the tools and a bit of touching upon the limits of experience, and then we'll go in more depth in the next episode in December. Continuing our voyage through this chapter 5. I also take this opportunity because Leon presented so well the role of the Yoginâm that comes and to some extent brings us into our language, not a synthesis, but a sort of a translation, a more easily accessible message of so many spiritual masters that we as mankind were privileged to have in our history, and we have it somehow translated under Nam into our daily living, into our daily times. So a sincere word of gratitude to Yoginâm for all his path and patient service to mankind, helping us, and in particular through the Book of Nâm, to go in this purifying journey, removing layers of ignorance with the biggest ally we can have, life. And I should add another ally, which is all of you. I think it's also a privilege to be sharing with you part of this journey, and that's also a power of Nam to bring such nice people really together. Very good. So I will invite you now to listen to some words of the Book of Nâm, provided by Alexander. He always makes these very nice productions that are the landmark of our episodes. So bear with me for a while.
task of human living. The sharing in what is does not depend on believing it. It is always there, whether it is believed or not. It is the unknowable essence from which human living as I-world, with its attributes and characteristics, flows. Whether human living is optimal or diverted, both in an individual and in a collective sense, depends on the degree in which the sharing in what is alive in attention. Attention is activated in Nam remembering. Nam remembering is supported by attitudes and behavior. The motor in the living of I-world is imagination. In order to move, imagination requires meaning. Without meaning, there is depression and stagnation. Only in meaning can people achieve fulfillment. Meaning that is lasting and fundamental needs to transcend what it searches meaning for. Dichotomies are not sufficient as meaning, because opposites are dependent upon each other. Meaning is in the transcendent, which, because it is transcendent, cannot be known. Living of I-world is based on meaning that cannot be known, because meaning holds as equal the being and the non-being of I-world. The sharing of I-world is not an individual life in a collectivity of lives. It is rather like the integral sharing of a drop in an ocean that shares entirely in the ocean. I-world as human living is called experience. There is no unit that has experience. It is experience that becomes I-world. As I-world, there is experience. The moving in experience is witnessing. Experience is what I-world is. Witnessing is what I-world does. A witness is what it witnesses. Bearing witness is not stating a belief that one has. It rather establishes what one is. Acting, thinking, feeling, desiring, believing, supported by ideas, ideals, opinions and beliefs, are the elements with which witnessing is experience. Experience is what I-world is as I-world. It is a range of infinite resonance. The dropness of I-world is experience. The ocean of the sharing of I-world is awareness. Awareness is not an extended experience. It is entirely unconscious and not determined. Awareness has nothing in common with experience other than that experience is embraced by awareness. Nothing can be ascribed to awareness. Awareness appears only as a quality of experience. This quality appears in attunement. In discordance, this quality is not there. Wisdom does not emerge as a degree. The sage does not know wisdom as wisdom. For the sage, wisdom is only common sense. When I-world is lived in awareness, it is never lived other than in common sense. Attunement is experience that is enriched by awareness. The natural state of I-world is attunement. In the ignorance of birth, it descends into a double error of separation. The first error of separation is that there would be a separation between awareness and experience. The second error of separation is that there would be a separation between sense of I and sense of world. Attunement emerges when I-world in its peaceful acknowledgement opens the constricted confines of its natural ignorance. I-world is born in ignorance. And with an inherent urge to overcome ignorance, this overcoming is the task of human living. All living in its daily appearance is with which the task of human living is performed.
Yes. Always so beautiful. Perhaps I move on now to Hubertus. I always find it interesting when you come with a more perspective on how we experience this in our lives, and what this really means, this task of human living. Is it an obligation? Is it something we have to do? Is it a responsibility? Is it what exactly is that task? How do we experience it? How can we live it? And yes, what are we supposed to do under this task? How will you see it, Hubertus? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mario. The last sentence of the quotes that Alexander was reading to us was that all living in its daily appearance is with which the task of human living is performed. And I would like to focus on that a little bit. Because as León shared with us, that our sharing in what is does not depend on believing it. It's always there, whether it is believed or not. So we are continuously sharing in the allness of all. And that is something that is very hard to remember every moment and every second of our lives. And that is illustrated with in many, many stories. You know, as long as humanity is there and able to communicate and use language, we are telling stories to each other that help us to define what to do. So where do we come from? Where do we go to? And what is happening around us? So we can decide what to do in the here and the now. And one of these stories, there's so many traditions, but one of these stories is about a rabbi that had the habit of walking every day for an hour at a certain point in the day. Most of the time it was after what we would call a siesta in Spain. And then he left his house and he starts walking and contemplating on the questions that were entering his mind, and digesting the things that he was perceiving, searching for wisdom, as rabbis ought to do. And this day, this was a particularly beautiful Sunday, and the weather was nice, and so he had a lot of to think about. And he was walking and walking, and he forgot all about taking care of knowing where he was. He was just walking, and he was in his story, in his contemplation, so absorbed that he didn't notice that it was already very late. And in that time, the Romans, they were the dominant reign in his area, and there was this evening clock. So he actually should be home before the dark, but he didn't notice that it's getting dark. And then he approached a Roman camp, and then it was already dark. And then suddenly from the bushes, a voice came, "Who are you, and what are you doing here?" So this rabbi suddenly awoke and was marveled because something entered his experience, and he said, "What? Who are you, and what are you doing here?" So this rabbi immediately asked this guy, "So, wow, how much do they pay you?" And this guard was actually quite surprised. And he just gave an answer like, I don't know, let's say 100 asses a month. That was his wager. And then the rabbi immediately said to him, you know what I will do? If you come with me, I will pay you 10 times as much. And then you come with me and you stand at my door. And every day when I leave the house, you ask me this question, who are you and what are you doing here? And every time when I come home, you ask the same question to me. So this is the story about the rabbi, and these stories are always a kind of riddle. You have to think about it. You have to contemplate what is meant by these stories of wisdom, you know. But considering the fact that we are always sharing in the allness of all, and it is so very easy to forget all about it, you know, like the rabbi was forgetting all about where he was and what he was doing. He was completely absorbed by his thoughts, and he got awakened by this voice that remembered him to wonder about who he was and what he was doing here. So I think this story is actually pointing out that in order to live optimally, it's not only important to do what you are doing. There's so many things we can do. We do all kinds of things. We can walk, we can preach, we can read, we can do a job. But why are we doing what we are doing? What are we actually doing with what we are doing? And the rabbi was happy that he was remembered to wonder about about this. What is this place in this moment, in this creation that he was there? Why was he walking? Why was he pondering all these things? So I think we have to go to Rumi to dive a little bit deeper into this story. And Rumi has said that two things actually, that we can do a lot in our life. You know, we can have a job, and we can become important, and we can be successful. We become rich. We can do all kinds of things. Most of the things we do, we find important because we have a kind of interest in that. But he says, if you don't perform the task of living, if you don't do that one thing, your life is a waste. And I've always been wondering what he meant with his story. So why is it not important to be a teacher and to help children to become members of society and to become happy? You know, all these things that we do, we think they are important. How can my life be wasted if I just not do one thing? So the answer of this is that it is not something beside all other things. The task of living is not one of the many things we have to do. It is the thing we have to do in all the other things. So this becomes clear with another story of Rumi, which says that if you eat a ball of rice, you can create beauty, loving kindness, community, respect, harmony. But you can also eat a ball of rice and create havoc, hatred, suffering, misery, egoism out of that. So how can I do that? I'm eating a ball of rice. So it's a strange story, actually, no? But then wonder, next time when you eat, it can be a sandwich. It doesn't have to be a bowl of rice. It's not what you are doing. Of course, it is for the practice of daily life very important to know what you're doing, you know, but the way you're doing it is more important. It's the conditio sine qua non of the meaning of your life. Is not what you're doing, but it's the way you are doing it. So what is then the way you're doing it? It is living in attunement. Living is in everything that you are doing. It's in your thinking, it's in your wishing, it's in your feeling, it is in your actions. But the way you're thinking, the way you're feeling, the way you're wanting, you know, all these things, the way can be a way of attunement or not. You know, you can try to think, wish, in the realization that you're an expression of the allness of all. And you can forget all about it and do your own thing and go against everything that is around you. Yeah? If you think you're a grain of sand on the beach, you're just an atom in the whole of reality. You're bumping against all other atoms. So this is a very physical way of looking upon us, an atomic way of looking upon us. But if you're a drop in the ocean, you know, and then if you start realizing that you're not just a drop in the ocean, but that the essence of the oceans is the same as your essence, it's water, then you start immediately behave in a different way. So how you want, how you think, and how you act are shaping your experience. And I think this is what we are going to dive into a little bit more next episode. So the thing is that when we are eating a bowl of rice, are we eating the rice as an attunement, as a remembering that we are expressing a totality, that we are an integral part of a whole, or are we just in consuming the rice? Now, this is still very abstract, but when I go down after this broadcast, and there is lunch set on the table, and I sat at the table and I start eating and enjoying and talking and all these things. Am I eating a sandwich? You know? Or am I doing all kinds of things except eating the sandwich in gratitude for the fact that it is there, realizing that everything comes together in eating this sandwich? You know how many effort and lives and all these things are coming together in my eating the sandwich. So I'm part of a cycle, of a totality. And when I eat this sandwich, I can do it, or I can do all kinds of other things and not eat the sandwich. And then somebody asked me, how did you like the sandwich? I have no idea. I had such a good conversation, but I don't know anything about the sandwich, which was made. So in this experiencing that I am doing, I can not be aware of my eating the sandwich. And this is actually our essence, is that we are experience as an expression of a totality. So the witnessing of experiencing is what we are doing. So in this witnessing, we can open up to awareness. So we can allow life to happen in its completeness. And then if we aim at allowing life to happen in its completeness, then some quality can enter this experience. So it's not, awareness is not something that we are doing. It is something that filters through when we are attuning in every act that we are doing, in every thought that we are having, cultivating, and every wish that we are cultivating. And the very beautiful old ritual to let's say give space to be in harmony with this allness of all is the tea ceremony in Japan. I've always admired this culture in that sense that Japan is an island, a group of islands, an island that is, life has not been easy there. You know, you have many earthquakes and tsunamis and all these, life was very insecure. So in this character of the people, the now, the moment of now, got a very, let's say became a very central aspect of their lives. They have a very different way of looking upon life. The I is not an element that stands on its own, but the relationship is everything there. You know, if you are, whatever you are doing, you are a relationship. You are a relation. You're not an atom. You're a relation. You are a sharing. So they have been able to reach a kind of perfection that has its admiration all over the world in creating swords or shaping flowers. You know, the bonsai thing, and in the tea ceremony, this is a beautiful ritual, which is actually a way of attunement. You have to. I don't know if you know something about the cha dough. The cha is the tea. The do means the way of the tea. And there's a very beautiful character, which is like a ladder standing against a tree. So the do, the way, is a way to get the apple from the tree. You know, it is a way of living. It's a methodos. It's a way. And the cha do is a way of attunement. So in that sense, like the aikido is a way of attunement. This is what is emphasized by the do. And this character of the chai do is very similar to the character of that describes Japan. So it is ingrained in the character of the people. And 4 aspects are very important in this tea ceremony. It's harmony. Why? Because if you are pouring the tea, if you're creating the flowers, making a calligraphy, or you're shaping the garden where the guests come in, everything is aimed at reaching a kind of harmony that can reflect the completeness of the allness of all. They're constantly trying to approach that perfection of the allness of all. Reflected in the garden, reflected in the way the tea is poured, reflected in the conversation, reflected in the atmosphere. And this is carried by an attitude of respect, like compassion, respect. They are close by to each other. Even when you offer a bowl of tea to your guest, you're not drinking the tea yourself. You're making it only for your guests. So you're not doing it for you, you're doing it for the guest. And then if you offer the bowl of tea, you turn the teacup, so the most beautiful side will face your guest. So you're continuously relating to the other. You're continuously relating to the totality reflected in the moment. And in that sense, the tea ceremony is a perfect way of finding attunement in a life that can be very, very dangerous and can be finished all of the sudden because of kind of an earthquake or a war or whatever. And why do people cultivate it for so many years already? It's because it's giving them the opportunity to live in attunement. And when they go out of the tea ceremony, they are remembered. They are remembered that they are an expression of the allness of all. So just to make it a little bit more concrete, you go down, or you go after this broadcast, you go eat, and you eat a sandwich, and maybe you drink a cup of tea. You see? But drinking a cup of tea, pouring a cup of tea, eating a sandwich is experience. That means that sharing in spirit, body, mind, and soul, as we shall see in the next chapter, in thinking, in wanting, in feeling, and in acting, you're sharing in the allness of all. This means that all these fields, all these dimensions are reflecting the allness of all. You see, you allow the allness of all to show itself, to express itself in your thinking, in your wanting, in your feeling. It's not you that wants or you that thinks. So when you pour a cup of tea, imagine that you're pouring a cup of tea, and you're doing that, and you allow the allness of all to express itself in the pouring of a cup of tea. That would be a nice exercise. And you can do that today if you want. And then my story becomes superficious, because in the pouring a cup of tea, you are attuning to the allness of all. And that's much more important than to listen to what I'm saying.
Thank you, Hubertus. Yes. So brilliant said. I think at least you'll be inspired to all of us. We know what we're going to do next. We're going to do that cup of tea for sure. Certainly, I'll do it. It is amazing to listen to both of you, actually, and particularly when you bring it to a context of a world as it's happening today, as it's happening now, where perhaps in a realistic way we don't see so much that union, but rather we see a vision of division. A vision of division. It's a bit you see a vision of greed, of self-interest, of individually collecting, no sense of we. And I think it's a bit undeniable that this is happening, yes. And however, the beauty, somehow the strength that brings to us under Nam, where I realize, and now I speak from my own experience, yes, I am affected by that. I am sensitive, I'm sentient, and I'm somehow aware that this is happening. But there is a certain unconditional element that develops that we feel the responsibility, or I feel the responsibility. I feel that there is a different path, and I'm ready to embrace that path. So how do you see that sort of interaction between our individual action and responsibility and the way that the world perhaps is going at the moment that can lead to some desperation? I don't know, maybe we can start with León and then pass to Hubertus just for a final reflection around this. León?
Yes, thank you, Mario. So, yeah, very beautiful narrative there that that Hub illustrates, and there's some really key elements I think that it touches upon. One thing is about pouring the cup of tea, right? That certainly later on, really look forward to that moment that I'm going to pour that cup of tea, and remember that that's a sharing in all. And this is also something that Yoginâm sometimes mentions, like this type of practice is usually often associated with meditation and with those elements, and you think it's taking place in a meditation room, that's where it really is happening. But Yoginâm always says, like, that's not where it's really is happening. Where it really is happening is indeed while you are cooking food, while you are doing the work that you're doing. And meditation is definitely a very helpful exercise to develop your attention and other type of concentration. And I think what also is very essential that we brought up is this task, that this is not one of the tasks amongst other tasks, that it is the one task that you perform in all other tasks that you are performing. That also means, so he mentioned that, like, for example, we have nowadays very much like career. Oh, you have to be good in a career, or a good a good teacher, and so on. And but the point is that if the task of living is, as Yoginâm says, it implies trying to do your best in everything that comes up. So it also means that in the task of maybe the job that you have, it is in that task of living, that attitude that comes along with that, you will also be trying to do the best in that job. If you're raising a child, you will also be doing the best to raise that child. And you could say, yeah, you do that anyway, of course, because you have a certain responsibility to the child, and you do. But that it's also a task of living, doing the best in a sharing in totality. If that was also part of it, it definitely adds a very other dimension to it. So this also shows that it is what we say, it's always about and not or. So if you say, let's say in your career, let's go back to that. So you do your work from that task of living, you try to do the best at your work as possible. So incidentally, that can have an effect that you have a very good career, for example, but not because you're striving for that, but because you're performing the task of living. So in that sense, to come to that state of the world, you could even say, and it's definitely true, you can be the president of a country. You can become the president of a country if you are, while you are centering your life in performing the task of living. It can even attain to that. And wouldn't it be nice if we would have some presidents around?
Yes.
that would not only be doing their work as a president, but actually in that have this intent, this spirit of performing the task of living, of contributing in the best way to totality.
Yes.
And this is a kind of a dream image maybe, but I don't think it's even unrealistic. It would be actually very, in a way, be natural. So yeah, that is how I would relate it to some.
Yes, thank you, Leon. For some of you may know that actually Leon and myself, we actually have the privilege in a different parallel world of working together. So we every day we can experience the magic of bringing this perspective into practice. Thank you, Leon. So, any final words before we close the session today? Something you'd like to bring on, Hubertus, of what you listen now?
Well, I think it's very beautiful that Leon brings into the attention that even it doesn't matter, you know, if you are present or if you are a toilet cleaner. But in the it's the importance is not what you are in that sense of what you identify yourself with, but what you are doing is you are relating to the transcendental. And if you do that in attunement, then the duende comes in. You know, the quality comes in. The quality is actually a kind of indication that a certain attunement is happening.
Yeah.
And so I think that is also so every moment that you think, I'm missing the quality, is a kind of invitation to start to rediscover this relating to the transcendental, to make an effort to eat your bowl of rice or pour your cup of tea, or to meet a person or educate a child, or having a political conversation as relating to the transcendental, and not as a kind of illusionary reality.
Yes, thank you, Hubertus. Amazing. So thank you guys, and thank you everyone. I think perhaps now we're reaching that time that we actually go to that cup of tea, and perhaps we can also look into our lives and whatever position, situation we are in. Just remember that duende, that magic, that transcendency that is there, and how connected we are to that. The outcomes may come in different ways, but perhaps that's not the most important thing, at least in the immediate, because in the long term, I'm certainly sure that under now we are doing what we are supposed to do. So thank you all. Thank you, Hubertus, once again. Thank you, Leon. Always so inspiring to be with you guys. And thanks, of course, to Yoginâm for all that wisdom and induction, energy, support that is brought sometimes in under not so direct ways, but certainly indirect ways that are cultivating the ground and the field. So I wish you all a nice Sunday, and more importantly, I wish you all a nice tea, and I see you on the 4th of September. Thank you.